Monster Monday. So now that I actually have my mic plugged in, we can actually do this correctly because I already recorded a good amount of this before I realized I hadn't plugged it in. How fucking annoying. Bride of Re-Animator, as requested by the beautiful, wonderful Kaylee. Thank you to her for not only requesting this, but actually watching it with me via text. We started it at the exact same moment. Now, I would have preferred to have watched the Amazon Prime version she was watching because this DVD right here bleh, is fucking terrible. It's full screen. Is that kind of is in focus-ish? And it looks like shit. So we'd already coordinated our play and we made sure we like FaceTimed really quick to make sure we're on like the exact same second. And then while it was playing, I was like, oh god, this looks horrible. I want to switch over to the version she's watching, but I didn't want to screw up in the timing. So I just sat there and I watched this shitty quality. Anyway, so this was directed by Brian Yuzna, who I'm a big fan of. I like, Society, which I think is his directorial debut. And he also did Return of the Living Dead 3, which is my favorite of the Returning of the Living Deads. He also did the damn Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, The Initiation, which is a pretty, it's definitely better than you would expect it to be for being a Silent Night, Deadly Night 4. Especially after how abysmally terrible Part 3 is. Oh my god, that is by far the worst of the franchise. And Part 2 is only like half of a movie with 45 minutes of clips from the first one. But whatever. Anyways, okay, so yeah, Yuzna is a cool director. He also did the Beyond Re-Animator, which is the third film in this franchise with Herbert West. Jeffrey Combs coming back. And Kaylee has not seen it, and I have not seen all of it. So we're actually going to watch it pretty soon here together, just like we did, through text and shit. So look forward to that review coming real soon. But yeah, let's get into the film itself. Now, this is set 8 months after the event of Re-Animator. And we, of course, are following Herbert and Dan like we were last time. Now, God, there's so many continuity errors that I've noticed in this that I just don't see an explanation for. One in particular that's fucking impossible. And the way that they address it is laughably awful. But anyway, one of them being that this is only 8 months later, and somehow they are full-blown doctors. They are medical students 8 months ago, and somehow they're out in some Peruvian war, and then they come back, and they're at that same hospital, and they are full-on doctors. And they seem like they're in charge. Did they just, skip right over their residency and everything? It's, I guess maybe in part 1, is that their residency, I guess? They're working in the hospital. But still, in 8 months, I don't see it, but maybe they're right at the end, and they graduated right after that. I guess it's possible. I don't know. They went from medical students to, out in the war to freaking back, and they were full-blown doctors, and I don't know. That seems really, really fast from where they seem to have been at in the first one. But it's been a while. It's been over a year since I watched the first one. So maybe they were just about to graduate from their, But I'm not a doctor. But I don't think what they were doing was their residency. Maybe. It's been too long. Anyways, one thing for sure is Dr. Hill's head. His eyes are crushed in. His whole head is smushed together as a pancake, and his head is thrown against the wall. I actually rewatched the scene before I fucking recorded this, because I was like, wait a minute, isn't his head destroyed at the end of the first one? 100% destroyed. And the way that they address that in this movie is the doctor who gets him from the detective, I think. He's like, oh look, he has a little dent in his head. I can fix that. A dent? His head is literally crushed like a pancake, and it's thrown against the wall. Ridiculous. And his eyes were gouged out. He fixed all of that? Bullshit. Doesn't matter to me in a movie like this. Doesn't have to. Even if They were like in the first year of medical school, and then 8 months later, they were full-blown doctors. Do I give a shit in Bride of Re-Animator? Not at all. But for the, for the fun of reviewing something like this, of course, I'm going to have to point it out. And all right, so then they return, as I said, to Arkham, Massachusetts, which is where a lot of, or I think most of, H.P. Lovecraft's stories were set, but this one is definitely set there. And I like the pun here to the head where it's like, you're a dead head. You're a nobody. That's some straight up dad joke shit for me, and I loved it. Nobody. Calling a head a nobody? That's funny stuff. Herbert makes this like finger spider that has an eye up here. This thing's creepy, man. It looks like something out of The Thing. And the stop motion and all that, and especially before that where it's just like practicals and not like stop motion where it's like claymation. That actually looks really cool, that fucking thing. It almost looks like Thing if you put an eyeball on it. It's just made purely out of fingers, which somehow all like attached together with like flesh and sinew and all sorts of different things, even though he just like put it together with rods a minute ago, but now it has like flesh and it all looks like, some cohesive thing. It makes no sense, but whatever, I don't care. The reagent must grow like quick skin or quick flesh. But the spider's really cool. That's, I guess, it's a finger spider thing with an eyeball. It's really cool, and the practical effects in this movie are fantastic, especially at the end. The last like 15-20 minutes of this movie is pure bonkers, totally insane, and that's the fun of it. I mean, that's what you really want to get to. But now, Dan's love life in this movie is out of control. It's out of control. He's like pining for Meg, who her fate is unclear at the end of the first movie. I remember she dies. She's strangled to death by one of the zombies. Then Dan, in a last-ditch effort, injects her heart with the reagent, and then she wakes up, I think, off camera and screams. But now she's just a heart. What happened? She didn't want to be an animated corpse, so she killed herself and ripped her heart out, much like the bride does at the end of this movie. Like, what happened there? I have no fucking clue. But Meg's fate is never revealed. We just have her heart. I don't remember them saying anything about how we just have her heart, but we just do. Anyway, so there's also Gloria, who's in the hospital dying, and I guess her and Dan have some kind of romantic entanglement going on. At least he's into her to an extent, and the only thing's not sick on her body is her head, which I don't think would matter, would it, with the reagent? Like, if you can bring back fingers from the dead only, I don't think it's really matters that they have to point out that her body's sick and nothing. Yeah, like, if her head had cancer in it, would it matter with the reagent? You know what I mean? So, like, why does it bother that her head isn't sick? They pointed that out, like, oh, well, look, her head's usable. It doesn't matter what you use in this fucking movie. He's bringing back, like, legs attached to heads and shit. So that was silly, but whatever. They live in a mortuary in this. I shouldn't get off topic there. Let's go back. I kind of forgot for a second. But his love life is Gloria, the girl in the hospital, Meg, the girl from before in the first film, played by Barbara Crampton, and her heart is the only thing that remains. And then there is like Francesca or something, who is Anna Maria Mazzarelli from Summer School, or A Lot of Vagina from the Austin Powers International Man of Mystery. Like, that's the first one that she's in. I think it's the first one. Whatever. Anyways, I know her always as Anna Maria Mazzarelli. I'll never fucking know her as anything else. I think that's her name in this, Francesca or Fran something. But he's like banging her, so and she just like stops by, and they're like down experimenting, and he just like takes her right upstairs and bangs her. This guy's all over the place with his love life and this shit, because he's just like, oh, I want Meg back. And so he takes this girl from the hospital who he's got a thing for, I guess. They cut her fucking head off, put Meg's heart, and then he calls her Meg. Like, if I assembled your body from, like, where was it? I wrote it actually all down. Where is it? It should be down here at the end. Here. The feet of a ballerina, the legs of a prostitute, the womb of a virgin, the head of his patient. The one hand is a lawyer's hand, waitress's arms, and the other hand is that of a murderess. A murderess. A chick murderer. But if you assembled all those things and the only thing that was in there was the heart, it's the head that matters. Like, your head is what retains your thoughts and your memories and everything. So that is Gloria, not Meg. Her heart isn't enough. You should have kept her head, but I guess they couldn't get Barbara Crampton to return, so it couldn't just have her head. He had to have her heart, but I guess the heart is all that matters in love, right? So it's Meg. If like you get a heart transplant, that's not you anymore. That's basically what he's saying. If you were to get a heart transplant to Dan, you are no longer you. You are that person whoever gave you, that you got their heart. So good to know, Dan. Good to know. And then we have the detective who is pissed off at Dan and Herbert because his wife was reanimated in the massacre in the first film, and he blames them for it. But then later in the film, we find out that he's probably the one that killed her. In fact, it's just outright basically said. I mean, they don't say it. It's implied, but it's heavily implied. He definitely killed her. So maybe he just was like scared he was going to get caught. That's probably what it is. He was trying to cover his tracks. Like, you almost got me caught for killing my wife. And Anna Maria Mazzarelli in this, she teases her tits so fucking hard, much like she does in Summer School when she's at the beach and she's just about to take off her top, and then boom. Why can't I think of her? Oh, Denise. Denise comes up and she's like, whoa, girl, this ain't the Riviera. And then she stops, and then Dave and Chainsaw are sitting there like, and their brains are broken from almost seeing their tits, or her tits. That scene's amazing. We took driver's training with Denise. Call us a cab. Can I call my parents and tell them I'm not coming home ever? If you haven't seen Summer School, please, I implore you, I beg you. I'd get on my hands and my knees right now, but you wouldn't even be able to see me, so just pretend that I'm there. Although if some of you start pretending I'm on my knees, you're going to be thinking of totally different things, I guess. But, whatever. Let's get back to the point. Watch Summer School. Mr. Shoop. If you don't know who fucking Francis Grimp, a.k.a. who actually, mind you, I should have brought this up. Somebody used to say this was douchey. I used to hold a pen when I did reviews. They're like, oh, it's so pretentious, actually. It was pretentious. It was pretentious because I held a pen. This is fucking pretentious. I can't even get this behind my ear. But Francis Gremp, a.k.a. Chainsaw, is the name of one of my patrons who joined at the first to die. I hate this behind my ear. That looks pretentious. First to die level. So thank you to him. I never gave a thanks, but now that I'm mentioning that name, that's a kick-ass name, by the way. But yeah, stop teasing the tits. Stop teasing the tits. Don't Kelly Meeker us, okay? A lot of animal death in this movie. A fuck ton of animal death, and pretty brutal at times as well. So that might not work so much with the faint of heart or the people who are like super hardcore against any kind of animal death. There's a lot of animal death in this. The bat, the cat, the dog. Like, there's so many. It's crazy. And dude, he puts an arm on a dog. Okay, after the dog dies, he puts an arm on the dog. And the pun that... Okay, I probably would have came up with this on my own, but I will say I was texting Kaylee a bunch of like puns throughout the movie, and she got this pun out before I even thought of it, but I'm sure I would have thought about it. Was she was like, oh, that, you know, that dog knows the trick of shake or something. I can't remember how she worded it, but then I replied back like, he knows shake and play dead. Pretty stupid. A story you don't need to hear at all. But I was going to try to make the joke, that's why, and then I couldn't do it because technically I didn't come up with it, even though I probably would have come up with it. But I'll give her credit. The dog learned how to shake. But he straight up has a fucking, like, man arm that comes out from his body. That's so cool. That's so cool. We do get to see some dead tits in this, a decent amount of them, one of them being Gloria's. And they are glorious from Gloria. And Dan is, yeah, as I put in here, Dan is into every chick. Dan, you sly devil, you. And so then Dr. Hill uses his telepathy that he had in the first film. I had to go back and look at Wikipedia to make sure. I was like, does he? And it's like, oh yeah, he experimented on those zombies, those dead bodies in the first one, and then he was able to control them telepathically. And in this one, the detective hasn't been worked on, but I guess he's mastered the art of reanimated telepathy. So he once again uses his powers, and he makes him come and sew bat wings onto his head. So if I was Dr. Hill in this situation, and I was in a morgue with this doctor who, you know, they trap in a freezer, I want to say, is what they do with him. So he doesn't even die, which is interesting. But whatever. With all the options that he has around him, including dead bodies, he decides to sew wings onto his head and become Bat Hill. What? What? Why wouldn't he use a body? They could have killed that fucking doctor or cut his head off and then attached it to him. And then he could have, you know, used the line from Child's Play 3. I'm gonna be a brother. It's probably offensive today, but who gives a fuck? That's what he says, right? That's the line in Child's Play 3. I'm gonna be a bro. I'm gonna be a bro? Is that what it is? Fuck, it's been too long since I watched that. Chucky, yeah. I can't remember the line. Something like that, though. I love that movie. I love the Child's Play movies, I have to say. Alright. The detective's wife, when she's dead, she reminds me of dead Henrietta from Evil Dead 2. I thought, when I was seeing her, I was like, she looks just like that. I expected her to start singing Rockabye Baby. Or no, that's not Rockabye Baby. It's the I'm gonna buy you a diamond ring. How's that song go? Fuck, I'm all over the place. I'm not remembering anything. Hush Little Baby. Hush Little Baby. That's the song. And her bodysuit, once she becomes Bride of Frankenstein, speaking of Bride of Frankenstein, this of course is a play on that, Bride of Frankenstein, and then this was later explored in Bride of Chucky. So we've got 3 major horror franchises who have done the bride thing, unless I'm forgetting of 1 or 2 or 10 or whatever. Let me know in the comments, but to my knowledge, there's Bride of Frankenstein, Bride of Re-Animator, and Bride of Chucky in those orders of release. And I don't know of any other ones off the top of my head, but correct me if I'm wrong. But her bodysuit, when she gets up and it's like all stitched together and everything, she looks like Frankenhooker, is really great. I thought the bodysuit looked fantastic, so that was cool. And Oh man, when Dan's like mean to her and he's like, "No, you're Meg" and all this shit, and then he decides to pick this Francesca, Anna Maria Mazzarelli, and she's like, "What do you want?" And then she's like, "Is this what you want?" I think is what she says. She reaches into her fucking chest and pulls out Meg's heart and just holds it in front of her, and it's still beating in her hand. It's like, although, veins and everything are still connected to it. That's fucking sad. That's actually a really sad scene because this poor girl, she's in the hospital, she's on her deathbed, she ends up dying, she thinks she has a thing for this guy, maybe, whatever. And then she's brought back to life, and he's just like, "I want you to be somebody else that's only a very small part of you." And then, does she know that it's Meg's heart in her? Did they say that in the film? Because that's a fucking plot hole, if not. How would she know that was Meg? There's 100 pieces of her. So she would have to know that that's Meg's heart in her. I'd have to go back and rewatch that whole sequence and find out when she woke up. Because she's injected with the reagent, and then it takes minutes and minutes for her to come back. At any time, once she's even just been injected, do they mention it's Meg's heart? Probably, because that's how they're distributing it. Although, that doesn't really make any sense, because the heart doesn't even start pumping until much later on. And why would the heart take that long to start beating? Because he checks, and he's like, "No, there's nothing." And the heart's supposed to pump to evenly distribute the reagent so that the body doesn't come undone, because I guess if one piece starts moving without the rest, it'll rip itself off. But she still has tissue rejection anyways, which seems a little late for that. I don't know, whatever. But she starts falling apart, which is fantastic looking as well. And then this is when all of like Herbert's creations to come to life, once the wall breaks down and they get into the crypt of the cemetery that's next door that the detective was wandering around in. There's, all of these like freakish creations that he has, and some of them are fucking wild looking. You'd have to watch the scene. There's so many different unique looking things. It's pretty badass, I have to say. And so yeah, after she falls apart and they get in there and there's all these creatures, the last act is just fantastic, and it feels very Brian Yuzna. So I love that about this film. The music in this movie reminds me of like the Psycho music, if the Psycho music was made at a carnival. Like, it fucking sounds like carnival music that's trying to be psycho. That's how I came up with how to describe how the music in this movie sounds. And Herbert commands the bodies to stop, and they actually listen to him before they're all trapped in there. Now, how Herbert gets out of there and starts working at the prison and beyond Re-Animator, who knows? They didn't stick with the continuity that Dr. Hill's head was fucking completely crushed. And at the end of this one, he's still laughing and he's still around. But yeah, this movie's super fun. The last act alone is worth the price of admission. They definitely had a good time with this. Honestly, like, if I could have written this, now the budget would have probably been too high, but what I think would have been cool, instead of going back and doing kind of a rinse, lather, repeat thing with Dr. Hill and all that, which I do like Bat Hill. It's ridiculous, and the ending is super cool. But what I think would have been a more interesting story, when I was just thinking about this right before I pressed record, and I was thinking about them working on these Peruvian soldiers in that Peruvian war that they're in. I'm about to sneeze. But I was thinking, because the whole point of them being there is that Herbert has just like an unlimited amount and supply of fresh cadavers to work on, because to him it's like the fresher the better. And what I think would have been really cool would have been for Herbert to start reanimating soldiers, and then they start like marching back into battle, and it would have been like, Army of the Re-Animator. That would have been fucking cool, man. Imagine like they just keep marching into battle, and they just keep blowing them up, and they just, Herbert keeps putting them back together, and you see all these like undead soldiers coming at the other fucking people, and they're all like disjointed, and like arms are like attached to their heads, and they have like guns on their heads. That would have been wild, right? But as I said, I think that would have been too expensive. But I was just thinking about that, like, oh, that's like the idea, right? That's kind of what the plot of uh, Return of the Living Dead 3, which was by Brian Yuzna as well. That's kind of the plot of that, is that the government is using that toxin that creates the zombies in the first in that third movie, in all the movies. But yeah, I mean that they're making it. They're trying to put soldiers back together so that the soldiers can never die and whatever. But yeah, just imagine that. That would be pretty cool. I think so. But I still like this movie a whole bunch, and I don't think I'm gonna like Beyond Re-Animator very much, because I did watch some of it and I was like, fuck, this feels cheap. This feels like a super downgrade. Like they just did not have the budget to make the film. But with Brian Yuzna and Jeffrey Combs involved, I'm looking forward to watching it finally. Because to my knowledge, I don't think I ever fully watched it. I know I started it, but I don't think I finished the movie. So there we go. I mean, it's pretty rare that I cover a sequel or something, or even a film on the channel that is older, that's attached to something popular or is popular, that I haven't seen. That's a rarity. So there we go. But that was fun, and we have 19 minutes left in Monday for me to even try to get this uploaded in time, technically in time. So anyways, thank you to Francis Grimp, aka Chainsaw, don't ever call me that, for being a patron. And thank you to Kaylee for asking for this and watching it with me. And we'll watch Beyond very soon, and I'll be covering it on the channel. So anyways, adios.